Hi, this is Mark McElroy here at Garrett's Guitars in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and I'm here to talk about this tube. This is a unique and interesting and beautiful tube. So, if you, this is a Russian-made 6L6. It's 6P3S is the designation in Cyrillic letters there. If you can get in focus there. And then it says its year of manufacture and month of manufacture, also on the stamp. So this, I guess it's a, is it a rhombus? It's four-cornered, but it's not a rectangle. Anyways, this shape here is the logo for the Foton factory. So I'm here to talk about Foton, the Foton factory and their tubes and why they're super cool. So there's some information about this on the internet, but very little. A little background of how I know this. I lived in Russia for some time. I speak Russian, and I would collect tubes for fun. There'd be these kind of little markets, ad hoc radio markets they call them, where you could buy parts for radios. They're already almost gone in the big cities, at least. But I would go down there and buy up tubes and learn about stuff from talking to the old guys. And this one particularly useful salesman told me a lot, but he told me the story of the Foton factory, which I will tell to you in English. So, in the 1930s, RCA set up a factory in cooperation with the Stalin government. A lot of people forget that before World War II, there was no Cold War. Russia was communist, but it wasn't a problem with the American authorities so much to do business in Russia. So, before then, there was some cooperation. Singer, for example, had a factory, a famous factory. Every Russian sewing machine is a Singer. And RCA set up did some business with the Soviets, and they set up a tube factory, amongst other things, radio parts manufacturing. Also, Joseph Stalin got a really badass home theater that was all RCA gear. And I happen to know this because I saw some of the gear that had gotten taken out of what was his dacha, or country home, that he actually had in the 30s, home theater, and everything had the RCA logo on it. It was pretty cool. Anyway, back to the story. The Foton Tube Factory was started in the Moscow area before World War II in the 30s in cooperation with RCA, using all RCA equipment. Then the war came around, and the story is they were worried, because at the time tubes were high tech, and they were worried about losing Moscow, about it falling into the hands of the Germans, and so they moved all their important stuff out of Moscow. The Germans never got that close to Moscow. Well, they got pretty close, probably 60 miles or so, but they didn't threaten as much as other cities. But just in case, they moved the factory and the factory ended up in the post-war era in Kazakhstan, in what today is the nation of Kazakhstan, which then was a province of the Soviet Union. This became the center of Russia's rocket program. Kidnapped German scientists would work there, and prisoners of war kind of scientists, but like they literally kidnapped German scientists and brought them to Russia. They apologized later for it. They would work in kind of prison-like conditions, but work as scientists. It was also where their space program was built. And if you remember, in the 60s, the Russian space program rivaled the American space program, and at times exceeded the American space program. So their high-tech at the time was pretty good. Enter the Foton factory. The Foton factory was moved to Kazakhstan. It made largely military tubes. So, and they were made on RCA gear. They were made to the highest standards, and if you look at this, can we see it? Right here, the OTK stamp. The OTK was the military spec quality control, and they took it very seriously, because if something failed and had your OTK number on it, you would go to Siberia. You were in trouble. So, if it's OTK stamped, it means something, and especially in the 50s and 60s era. So, in and I should have looked this up, I guess, but around the early 70s, the factory was destroyed in an earthquake, and that was it. And of course, tubes were less important, and they weren't used in spaceships. So I don't think they built a replacement. There were 4 other tube factories in what is now the former Soviet Union. So, but these tubes can still be found. They made so many. They're just a factory. They just made them. And they sat for years in boxes, and no one threw them away, because no one threw anything away in the Soviet times. And they can still be found. And so they're essentially an RCA tube made in the Soviet Union. You can find it in new old stock, and that's the logo. Anything from Foton is probably pretty cool, but the 6L6 is what I use in my own amps. It's pretty exceptional. So that's the story of the Foton factory. Making other videos talking about tubes and things that I know, and I'm going to post them on YouTube. So go find our YouTube channel through our website or through YouTube. Do a search. And thanks for watching.